Okay, so we're going to get cracking then. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. This is a wonderful, wonderful special event. We've got special guest Madhavi Parker from Positive Minds Australia. And I'll just introduce myself, so if people don't know who I am, they've got a bit of context. So my name is Genevieve Hodge, and I'm a youth success coach, and I work at Spire Coaching. And we develop young people to become leaders of the future through two programs, Skills for Success, which is a youth life coaching program, and Inspiring Teens, which is a 3-month intensive leadership program where students work on projects in the community solving real problems. And as part of our mission to keep teens inspired, hi Tracy, do you mind just reducing your video, please? As part of our missions to keep teens inspired, I bring on guests to talk about topics such as leadership and mindset and success. And as today's topic, we have got Madhavi Parker, as I just said, from Positive Minds Australia, and she's going to talk to us about resilience, building resilience in our teens. So welcome, Madhavi, and please introduce yourself, and it's over to you.
Oh, hello. Thank you so much, Jen, for such a lovely introduction, and welcome everyone. I'm so pleased to kind of meet you in the virtual world. I wish we were all in the same room. Maybe one day we will be. Resilience. So we know it's a really relevant topic right now because of everything that we've all just gone through with the global pandemic, and we're still trying to navigate, and we're still really trying to recover from everything. There really hasn't been an opportunity for any kind of catch-up time. So what we're talking about today are tools that really, resilience is like developing a muscle. If you want to develop physical strength, you exercise, you go to the gym, you move around, and you need to invest that right across your lifetime, and resilience is very much like that too. So I'm going to come clean and tell you I've got no magic tricks for you, but if you can stick around, I'm going to go through the pillars of what it takes to become a resilient person. But first I want to acknowledge the importance of taking the pressure off yourself. You know, I'm a parent of 3 young children. One of them is actually now a teenager as well. And there is nothing that will ever fully prepare you for this role of parenting. And I think there's so much information out there now that it's really easy to get up and get caught up in thinking, well, I need to know the answers, or if my child's not resilient, I must have done something wrong, or there must be some tool that I haven't developed yet that I need to use. You know, resilience doesn't develop across a straight line. Resilience can be really high one day and really low the next day. And that is completely normal part of being a human being. And when you look at your teenager, it's very easy because we love our children more than anything. And ultimately, all we want is the very best for them, to get caught up in what still needs improving and what they're struggling with. And when we look at resilience, you know, you can be highly resilient in a particular area as a teenager and really low in resilience in another area, and you can still be a resilient person. And I think this is the challenge with topics like this, which I love, and I've written books about it and I speak about it regularly. But it's really important to first and foremost acknowledge you can't possibly have all the answers as a parent. And because you're parents of preteens and teens, we don't even know what we're going to get some days, right? So you think you've figured something out, and the next day they come with a whole new challenge, and you're learning to parent your teenager just as they're learning to navigate life as a teenager. So what I'm saying is, let's cut ourselves some slack as parents.
Yes.
And stop having this, it's an unrealistic expectation that there is one simple solution to resilience. There are multiple layers. And let's just combine that, my beautiful friends, with, you know, the minute they're born, they come with a stamp, right? They come with a temperament, they come with some genetics, they come with a personality. And if you have more than one child, you know that you don't just hit repeat on these kids based on those things. They come to us with their own particular set of characteristics. So how can we possibly expect to know what to do all the time? So to release yourself of that pressure, because for us to raise resilient children, we also need to be resilient ourselves. We need to be putting the work into ourselves to develop those resilience muscles. And we can't do that if we're expecting more of ourselves than is reasonable just because of what we've read in a book somewhere or what people are talking about that we need to do. So that's the first thing that's really important. The next thing is, as I've just mentioned, we have to look at the context of our child. I've seen in the chat box, there's a real variety and there's a bit of a theme. And one part of it is they think they're fine. They don't want any input. And you know what? Here's the thing. Teenagers think they know everything. I love teenagers, and their intentions are just as good as anyone at any age in life. You know, every single one of us get out of bed each morning wanting to get along with other people. And one of the hardest things in raising a teenager is how they come across on the outward, on the front, is very different to what's going on underneath the surface. So when we look at our teenagers, it's very easy to get caught up in their negative attitudes and their incredibly socially clumsy way of communicating, which is a very normal part of being a teenager, right? It's basically like getting a toddler all over again. The brain goes through very similar changes and goes to that same level of egocentricity. But when they're two, they're cute. It's easier to forgive them, and they just can't talk back to us in the way a 13-year-old can, or an 11-year-old can, or a 15-year-old can. It's very different because their language skills are so different. It's very normal for a teenager to be testing boundaries with you and seeing what they can and can't get away with. So that's the next thing, is really understanding the context of where they're at developmentally, which is they're basically like a toddler in a slightly stinkier and hairier body, right? And so we have to depersonalize their behavior and not see it and not take it personally. So when they speak to us in ways that are socially, emotionally clumsy, we kind of have to remember in our head, they really are going through a massive change structurally in their brain that makes it hard for them to behave in socially, emotionally appropriate ways with us consistently. We are their safe place. They test everything on us, and unfortunately for us as parents, they test everything out on their siblings too. You know, our families are where we learn to get along with others. It's where we receive boundaries from our parents about what is and isn't acceptable. But if we want them to listen, we have to go in from a place of empathy where we say, you know what, I can see you're finding this really, really hard. But if we go from a top down, you can't speak to me like that and you can't do this, they just tune out. Teenagers think, they genuinely believe they know everything. And if we were brave enough to go back to when we were teenagers, so did we. So the reason I'm explaining this is when we think of resilience, it's like, okay, well, give me the tools, Madhavi, come on, give me the tools. If we don't have this foundation in place, if we don't have an understanding, we can't reach them. They will not listen. And until we fully understand that, you know, I always talk to parents about looking for the essential goodness in our children. And I hope that will answer some of those first questions that have come through, which is, you know, they don't want to listen. They don't want to get help. They don't see what the problem is. They can't at the moment. These guys, teenagers, their prefrontal cortex, that thinking part of their brain, is constantly offline. They are acting primarily off emotion and impulse. That's what it is to be a teenager. It's an immature stage of life. And so we have to slow down and we have to sneak in with how we reach them. So I could talk to you for hours about that, but let's start looking at resilience. And I talked right at the beginning.
Just before you do, I just wanted to just recap for those that have come in a bit late, because it's just such a brilliant intro, and I've just taken a couple of notes down, and I'm sure there's lots I've missed, but you were saying that, you know, resilience is like developing a muscle, and that as parents we shouldn't have such unrealistic expectations on ourselves that there's just a magic wand and we can just make our kids resilient, because, you know, there's going to be days when they are resilient, there's going to be days when they're not, and but we, you know, it's a muscle we can work on, and that we should be looking at our teenagers. I've only got toddlers at the moment, but one day I will have teenagers. So this is so funny, the analogy you use, which is like combining it, that they're like toddlers in stinky, hairy bodies, and they're quite socially clumsy, and that it's because of the prefrontal cortex is still developing, so they just very reactive and working on impulse, and so as a parent you've got to come in sort of the back way and work in it that way. So you're just about to go into resilience, and I just wanted to say to the audience who's on Zoom, we've just muted and turned off the videos for everyone because we're live on Facebook at the moment, and I don't have permission from all of you to go onto Facebook, so I'm sorry about that. But if you've got any questions, please do go into the chat box, because we're going to answer questions at the end with Madhavi, sorry. And so if you've got any questions, just put it in the chat and we'll answer them at the end. Okay, sorry, back to you, Madhavi.
Oh, thank you for summarising that so succinctly, Jen. That's awesome. And yes, please ask questions. I won't answer them along the way, but I will answer them at the end in about 15 minutes or so. So let's look at the foundations of resilience. Now, remember that bit about building a muscle. So when we look at COVID-19 and the lack of preparedness that we saw, you know, it's like we come at teaching resilience too late, right? We wait for there to be a problem. So what we really want to do with resilience, we want opportunities every single day for our children to develop those muscles. And the first pillar of resilience is confidence, right? And the best way to get confidence is through competence. Now, one of the greatest challenges of parenting right from the beginning, right, is our children are heavily reliant on us as leadership, as providers of leadership, but also providers of a whole bunch of other stuff. If I look at our family trying to get out the door, there's like it feels like we've done 50,000 things before 8 a.m., right? There are so many things that our children need to do before they leave the house. Now, if we do too much for them, so the way I put it is, if we do for our children anything that they could do for themselves, we are removing the opportunity for them to develop confidence in a skill. Now, again, with everything I share with you, sometimes you've just got to do it to just get out the darn door, right? And so that's okay. You must follow your intuition and your family context. I know some of you have children on the autism spectrum, which adds a whole other layer where they do need that additional scaffolding and that additional support. But you look at your child, you look at their personality, you look at their temperament and you think, okay, well, what can my child do for themselves that I'm currently doing for them that I need to step back from? Because if we take on more than is reasonable, and we're all exhausted, so it'd be really nice for us to take off some of these duties. When we do that, what we're saying is I trust your confidence and competence to be able to manage these aspects of your life. Now, you can't just walk away and say, I'm no longer making your lunches for you, or I'm no longer going to drive you to the bus stop, or I'm no longer going to do this. Then immediately a rift forms between you and your child. We have to present our belief in their confidence in a really empathic and loving way. So when we look at confidence, if you're not confident, you can't be resilient. And so we got to start from these really minor things where we say, hey, you know what? I was just thinking the other day that I love doing stuff for you. Like, I love making your lunches in the morning. It makes my heart sing. I feel really good. I know it doesn't, because I'm a mother too. But when you talk to them and show that you do love doing things for them, but then you have this conversation where you say, you know what, I was just thinking, I know you can do that stuff really, really well, and I'm wondering how I can help you get started on doing more things for yourself. Because when you have these conversations, this is all parenting is an ongoing set of conversations that we continually revisit, where we show our children, you're part of this whole growth of your life, because ultimately we've only got them for a little bit longer in our homes. And our responsibility as parents is to prepare them so that when they are no longer living with us, they need us for no more than love, no more than that natural support, that here's this special person in my life who I love being connected with. If they don't know how to make a sandwich, wake themselves up in the morning, all right, even those things like having an alarm clock, being able to talk to your teacher when you haven't finished an assignment on time. If we do any of those things for them, we're saying you're not competent enough to handle this yourself. And while they'll make us feel like they need us to do it, they'll beg us, because children get very dependent on us very easily. So it's really crucial to develop confidence that we start stepping away from them in the teenage years, but we make sure we prepare them with the tools that they need. And then we get really brave parents, and we learn to say no to things that are unreasonable. Because every time we say yes to things that are unreasonable, every time we fix their problems for them, every time we get in touch with their teachers, or let's just say, you know, they go to school and they haven't taken that USB with an assignment, and we know they've been working really, really hard. I know for one, I'm so tempted to drop that USB off at high school, and because I know she's worked incredibly hard. But every time we solve a problem for them, we're saying you can't solve problems on your own. You need someone bigger, smarter, wiser to come in and solve this for you. So it's a little bit about them having some short-term pain for long-term gain. Now, it's hard.
This is just gold.
It's so incredibly.
I think it's so important. And again, I'm just going to recap quickly on what you've just said, because developing confidence and competence in our young people is the first kind of pillar to building resilience. And what we want to do is try and empower them to make their own decisions, because if we do it for them, then they're learning that someone else can do it for them, and that they always need someone bigger and smarter to do it for them, and to fix their problems. And you know, it just reminds me, the other day I was coaching a teenager, and his mum wants him to have more self-management skills, and I said, why don't you because he wants to get a job, and I said, why don't you treat your mum as like the boss, and what you want to do is start impressing her and saying, how can I help you, mum? What can I do? Because if you start practicing with your mum and then go into the real world and start saying to your employer, how can I help you? Yes. Boom, you're going to be the most valuable employee in the place. So start practicing with your mum. And
yes, I love that.
Pretty clever. But yeah, trying to solve their own problems. Sometimes they might need a bit of help at the beginning, but then...
Absolutely. I think, you know, every time they come to, you know, we love our children so much. So when they hurt, we hurt. And it's, you know, we have all of this knowledge that they don't have because we've lived so much longer than them. But every time we give advice, right, what happens in that moment that we're giving advice is we're not letting them do their own thinking.
Yeah.
And you're right, Jen, we need to give some information, and we need to support the process of their learning. And so we do help them along the way with developing problem solving skills, but we want to ask them, well, what do you reckon is going to work? You know, what do you think will help in this moment? And one of the best tools that we can have to facilitate that process where they're developing their resilience through problem solving, through competence and through confidence, is to use reflective listening, where they come to us and they give us a problem, and when they've given us that problem, we simply reflect back to them what they've just told us in our own words to show, do you know what? I'm just checking that I've understood this. And then we say to them, I'm so glad you came and told me about this, because we want our teenagers to keep talking to us. And if they find that when they come to talk to us, they see us either solving the problem for them, which is teaching nothing, but also saying, I don't think you're capable of doing this, on a subconscious level, that registers as, yeah, I just need to keep going to mum. I need to keep going to dad. I need to keep going to my teacher. Every time we do that, we rob them of the opportunity of developing that self-confidence. So we are their champion. We're their consultant. We're that person that helps them arrive at the answers without being the answer. So it's the same, you know, with the example I gave when they don't come prepared to school. You know, by the time they reach university or their first job, whatever path they follow, no one's going to look at them and go, yeah, no worries, just ring your mum or ring your dad and they'll bring it in. You're simply going to fail, or you're going to start developing a bad reputation with your boss. So ultimately,
you have the guilt and the shame.
Yes.
That negative, and that's what hopefully will remind them next time too, that they have to do that.
Exactly. Now is the time to fall. You know, now as early in childhood as possible, if you've got the younger ones too. You know, we've got our beautiful, loving parents there to hold on to us and be there and love them no matter how many mistakes that they make. Now's the time to make these mistakes. When we look at the literature on resilience, if children haven't failed enough, if they haven't made enough mistakes in the early childhood and the early teenagers, and when they make those mistakes, be received by their parents and the caring adults in their lives to say, you know what, you are not the first person to make this mistake. I'm so glad you're telling me about this. That empathy and connection is what tells them this is normal. I mean, I'm 46 and I'm still making loads of mistakes, and that's the reality of life. Is we're constantly learning, and the earlier we learn it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to struggle with stuff, we're less likely to have that fear of failure that leads to perfectionism, which is going to instantly reduce your resiliency. This is all tied in together. So we really want to say to them, I care about your problem. Your problem really matters to me. And I can see this is really, really hard. How can I help? You know, how can I support you to come up with a solution? So there's so many more layers, but just think confidence, competence. The next thing is connection. To be a resilient person, you need to be connected. You need to be connected with good people who see you for who you are. And this is the really hard bit. By nature, teenagers need us. They need to know we think they're the ants' pants. They need to know we love them more than anything. They need to know that we are so glad that they were born. And so we need to tell them, I'm so glad you're in my family. And I know we have our moments, but I want you to know there is nothing that will stop me loving you. And there is no mistake so big that I won't be here to support you through it. That is how we connect with our teenagers. Now, they might just go, oh, right? I mean, you just can't wait for feedback for them to know you're on the right track, because they're so socially clumsy a lot of the time. But also, they're trying to separate from us. So they want to be I know what I'm doing, right? So you've got nothing to tell me. We depersonalize and we keep a consistent message of connection that no matter what, you are loved, you are liked, you are seen, you are heard, and you are valued. And when we can do that, we have the best chance of coming out of the darkness still connected to our teenagers. Don't wait for their feedback. Yes, Jen.
I don't know, can anyone else hear that sound?
It's not bothering me, but yes, Jenny can hear it.
Something has happened to your sound, Madhavi.
It's my sound.
Oh, it's back better. Better. Oh, it just went really loud and sort of crackly.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm loud enough as it is, Jenny.
No, that's all right. It's the
okay
technology. Now? Yep. Sorry, keep going.
Okay.
So you were just talking about they're trying to separate from us, and that that we tell them that they are loved, that they are liked, they are seen, and then I sort of missed the second part you were saying.
They are seen, heard, and valued exactly as they are. Yes, hi, Alona. So we really need to stay connected if they're going to keep listening to us and keep telling us stuff. So we stay connected by unconditionally accepting our children for who they are and making sure they feel seen, heard, and valued for who they are. And that even though we have very clear boundaries with our teenagers about what is and isn't acceptable behaviour, that we make it really clear that that isn't attached to who they are as human beings. So we continue to guide our children, we continue to provide really great leadership, really clear boundaries, because ultimately we're raising them for the world, aren't we? We have our children for so little a time. What we want to do is deliver after that very first big delivery at the start of their life. The second delivery is the delivery to the world. You know, we want to deliver young people who are going to like themselves and who are going to like other people. So let's keep going because we have very little time left before I'm going to take your questions. So one of the next pillars for resilience is really strong development of character. And you know, here's the thing is teenagers are kind of a bit sloppy for a while, right? Don't panic. I've been working with young people for close to 25 years now. Like, this is all I've done my whole life, is develop social emotional literacy, resilience, confidence, well-being in young people. So I'm old enough now to be able to tell you that the 5-year-old that was biting my feet, the 15-year-old that was saying they hate their life, they hate their parents, and they're quitting on everything, they all turned out okay. It is very, very rare that by the time you reach later on that you're really, really struggling with the stuff you were struggling with as a young person. And for those beautiful families with children on the spectrum, my very first job after studying psychology was working at Autism SA. So it's an area that's very dear to my heart, and certainly where a lot of my work has gone into. Hang in there, because they just take a little bit longer. And I see those beautiful kids and now I see them in the supermarket and they're 25, because I have been doing this that long. And they come up to me and here's what they say. They say, Madhavi, thanks for not hating me when I used to say all that stuff to you. Thanks for forgiving me. I'm really sorry for all the things I used to tell you. Like, I remember telling you when you were pregnant how fat and awful you looked. Because, you know, kids on the spectrum say what comes to their mind. They have the most beautiful hearts, but they don't have a great filter. And so we have to respond to our children, whether they're on the spectrum or they've got learning difficulties, or, you know, the boys, they take so much longer with their executive functioning and prefrontal cortex development. So we just have to meet them where they're at. We have to try and stay connected. And here's what we've got to focus on. I spoke earlier about essential goodness. Really looking at our children. And here's a question for you later. You know, describe your kid based on their character. You know, based on who is this kid? Are they fun? Are they loving? Are they generous? Are they kind? Are they honest? You know, when we focus on our children's character, when we focus on essential goodness, it's a no-brainer, because every one of us wake up every morning wanting to be connected. Every child I consult with, I see every single day, they wake up wanting to get along with their parents. They wake up wanting to get on with their guardians. They wake up wanting to get on with their teachers. But because of all the backstory, because of their social emotional clumsiness, because of their impulsivity, because of their low confidence and self-esteem, for whatever reason, all of these variables have an impact on how we behave. It's the same for us. So we have to some degree, forgive that, not personalize it and see it as because we haven't done something or raised them a certain way. We forgive it, we understand it, and we think, let's just focus on this kid's essential goodness, because every one of your best relationships are with people who see you for who you are and accept you for who you are, right? We're not having great relationships with people who are constantly telling us how we need to improve. So we all know we've got stuff we could do better. We all have things that we need to improve on. That's the side journey of life, and we get there. But if our character is not acknowledged, if we are not seen for our strengths, if we are not seen for the competence that comes by nature we have from being asked, we're already stuck. We can't progress. That's the point of progression. That's the beginning. I'm conscious of the time. The next thing for resilience is coping skills. So we all got COVID-19. I've just recently written a book again, focusing for educators this time, that's not released. But again, one of the things I'm talking about is if we don't develop resiliency skills and be prepared that life does not follow a linear path, we are going to have problems. You and I here in this group, we've all lived long enough to have at least faced some really massive obstacles. You know, doors close more times than doors open. This is part of life. We've all been through multiple big things, myself included, that we could never have anticipated. And one of the best things that we can do is to be prepared. And resilience is about being prepared. It's not about what you do in the moment. It is partly that, but it's also about being prepared. So it is that competency, it's those capabilities, it's that confidence that comes from simple things like knowing how to make your own lunch, knowing how to turn your own alarm clock off, knowing how to explain to your teacher when you turn up and you are unprepared, being on the spot and answering to your teacher in that moment in whatever way you feel is competent to get yourself out of hot water, rather than having your mum send a note or your dad send a note to say, I'm really sorry, Jack's really tired at the moment and that's why he hasn't arrived with this. I'll pop it in a moment. Every time we do that, they can't develop those skills. So we want to focus on coping skills. We want to teach. And so what are coping skills? We need to know how to process our stress from the beginning of our life. So stress is part of life. So if you've got a 2-year-old at the other end of your family, or a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old, we want to teach them, how do you cope with feelings? Feelings are normal. A lot of us weren't taught that in our generation, on how to cope with feelings. We have to learn to cope with our feelings as well. So coping skills are a crucial part of becoming resilient. Now, teenagers, what would you know? If you come up with an idea for them now, it's like, no, that's not going to work. I'm not going to do that. So we have to be prepared. So it's about putting it on them and say, you know what, mate, it's really hard being a teenager. I want you to know, I don't remember how hard it was because I'm like miles out of that. But I do remember it being hard. And I want you to know it's okay to find this hard. No one finds it easy. So when you're going through all this stuff, I can see you trying to keep up with your sport and you're trying to keep up with your study. What do you reckon is going to help you move some of that stress through? So you're again passing the baton on, and instead of going, you need to exercise more often, or you need to eat more healthy food, or you need to put your device away, they're not going to listen to us. We need to give them a sense that they are the expert. I think we're going to wrap it up in a moment. So the other 2 things that I really want to, that's hard to come at when they're a teenager, certainly this is hard, is contribution. When we look at the resiliency literature, contribution is absolutely crucial. If we live too much in our own mind, if we are just serving ourselves, if we are, and this is what teenagers are like, they're so egocentric, so that's all they want to serve is themselves. If our young people are not contributing enough to the world, if they're not contributing enough to the home, they can develop a sense of entitlement that even though they resist us asking them to contribute, like, oh, I'm going to do that, that's really dumb. Remember, we're not personalising that stuff anymore. We are the leaders and we want to lead them towards contribution that's meaningful to them, not meaningful to us. So help them find something. And finally, and Jen alluded to it a little earlier on, is control. There's like 100 other things I could talk about, but we don't have time. But control is a really important thing. The other word for that is autonomy, decision making. They need to be part of this process. When we look at the literature, around not only resilience but anxiety and unhappiness, we know that we need to have a sense of control in our life, that we can have an impact on it. So there's a lot more I can share with you, but I've just seen I've gone way over time, so thank you for being so incredibly kind. I don't know whether you've all just
it's all gold, Madhavi. It's gold, and I could seriously listen to it all day long. It's just brilliant because, yeah, you've got such an in-depth knowledge and wisdom and experience with all of this, and I can imagine that it just relates to all parents, all people, really, because it's how can we be developing that within ourselves, and how can we be developing it within our young people? Because there are going to be constant challenges in the world, as we, throughout life, and there are going to be good days and bad days and things like that. But it's so interesting because we run leadership programs at Spire Coaching, and one of the programs is called Inspiring Teens, and it's all about, it sort of touches upon each of those things that you were talking about, because what we do is we put them in a sort of a supported, stressful environment. Where they are empowered to make their own decisions by working on projects to solve problems for real not-for-profit organisations. And so, and so all of a sudden they're doing the contribution thing that you were talking about, contributing to something else that's important to them, and it's being in control because they're in control of the project. They're empowered to make decisions and solve their own problems. They are supported through failure because we want them to make mistakes, as you were saying, because that's where the learning is. And the students who did projects that didn't do as well as they were hoping or had conflict, they're the ones that learned the most, because of all the reflection that we do afterwards. It's like, what did you learn? And they just learn, incremental learning. And they're put under stress because they've got to manage that on top of their schoolwork, on top of their household duties, on top of part-time jobs or whatever. And so they are stressed because they have to learn how to manage their time, but it's in a supported, friendly environment. And so I love how it sort of encapsulates everything you were just talking about, because we want to build resilience in our young people, and we can do that through leadership programs. And one of my questions, I'll start the questions off because I know that everyone's got some questions and I'd love to hear from everyone. But how do you feel about, putting them into scenarios where they are in sort of a little bit outside of their comfort zone, where they can be under stress, a little bit of extra stress?
Fabulous question, Jen. So when we look at resilience, that's exactly what we want to do. Now, there's learning. I think a lot of people talk about the comfort zone and a feeling that you can't learn in your comfort zone. You can also learn in your comfort zone. What we want to make sure young people are doing is they're regularly stepping out of their comfort zone to try things that are just a little notch, just one notch above their current competency level. So we do need to experience those feelings of discomfort to get good at discomfort. So you can't get good at any emotions. And this is why when we're developing our resilience, if we make life too perfect, if we don't take on those challenges, or like what you're doing with your leadership program, if the first time you do that is when you're in your first job, or later on, or when you become a parent, if they're the first time you're met with lack of predictability and there's nobody but you haven't already developed the neurological wiring that happens in your brain every time you do something. So we have to feel a broad range of feelings. So we do need to encourage them to step out of our comfort zone. But again, we do that by collaborating with them. So just because we might think rock climbing's great for a kid with anxiety, that might not be the best starting place. The best starting place for them might just be a bike ride in a new place. So we have to meet our children where they're at developmentally. And absolutely, yes, Jen, we must take our children, support our children to come out of their comfort zone, but not where we're just pushing them into what we think will help. We've got to ask
throwing them in the deep end.
And then show empathy, always empathy. We always show them. We get that it's hard, because if we don't show them and say to them, say the kid has high anxiety and the last thing they want to do is deliver a presentation, but they need to do it. When they're talking about it, we don't want to just say, you'll be fine, you know, you're really good at doing this. Once you're up there, you're fine. We need to acknowledge the emotion for them to process the pain of that emotion. So we say to them, you know what, it is really nerve-wracking for you. I get that. And you know what, it's nerve-wracking for most people. And I'm really proud that you're giving it a go. Or if they do a rock climb and that's way out of their comfort zone, say, you know, I watched you and you sat with that uncomfortable feeling of being up so high, and was just incredible and a privilege to watch. So we're now helping them navigate as supporters, and we're also talking about the feelings, and we're not belittling those feelings, and we're not making resilience sound easy. Resilience is not easy. I mean, every time we've all fallen, it's been really utterly painful to get back up again.
Yeah.
And hasn't it? So,
oh yeah.
You know, we look at all these success stories. No one talks about the stuff along the way, all the closed doors, all the things that went wrong, all the times we failed. So we want to have this authentic, open dialogue without minimizing how challenging it is to develop resilience. I gave you far too long an answer.
That was brilliant. That was brilliant. Okay, now I want to see what.
Left.
Yeah, I just want to see what questions people have written here. So Audrey has said, so it's good to let them fail at times, and she also then said that she's raising a teen as a guardian, so she doesn't have the background history of their parents' style of parenting. Any specific tips for that?
Hi, Audrey. What a hero. So one of the hardest things when you're raising a child as a guardian is no matter how good you are at being a guardian, they're going to push you and push you and push you away because they've lost so much trust along the way in their life. And what we see in children like this young person who's lucky enough to be guided and supported by you is it's too scary sometimes to be connected and to trust again. So have faith in yourself, first of all, that no matter what you're doing, the integrity and compassion and leadership you're giving might not be those seeds you're planting. You might not see the benefits of those in front of you, but you are making an enormous impact on rebuilding the structure in their brain to support them through. So you don't have the background, but you do have now. And this is what I talk to educators about all the time, is some of the kids who've had trauma and had terrible upbringings. These kids are just still looking for a secure person who's consistent and compassionate. So that's the first bit. But the other question you had is, it's okay to let them fail. It is, but at the same time, we're always sitting on the sidelines, aren't we? So we're talking things through with them. And when they fail, we need to also have a conversation that's empathic and compassionate about that failure. So we say things like, you're not the first person to make that mistake. You're not the first person to fail at this. And you then help draw their attention back to their character, back to their strengths, and also to the times they haven't failed. Now, you don't do that all in one conversation, but what you're doing is you're reminding them that in amongst the failure are lots of successes. By nature, as humans, we focus, and I alluded to this earlier on where I said it's really easy to get caught up in what's wrong with our kids and what they need to fix and what they need to work on, but we've also got to focus on what they're already good at. So we want to support them. We want to ask them when they fail, you know, what do you reckon will help you next time? What might you do differently? What have you learned? And they're the ways that we support them through that. I mean, there's an hour-long answer to that, Audrey, and I wish we had more time, but I'm conscious. Finding their strengths. So, Audrey, there's a lovely website that you can all go to, and it's good for you to take this assessment too. It's the viacharacter.org website that you can take an evidence-based strengths assessment. So I do that with, you can do that from middle school and up. And you basically find out what your strengths are as a person. You know what? It doesn't matter whether you're good at maths and running a race. It's really back to your character. If we can all work out where we're strong as human beings, that's where a lot of inner, similar to that, Audrey. So any kind of strengths assessment to focus on that. And then even in those moments, you know, when a teenager is losing the plot or they're failing to listen, that's actually a great opportunity to get a buy-in by focusing on their strengths. So it might be something like, I love your determination. You know, when you care deeply about something, you will go all the way to express your point, and I love that about you. So you still come back with your boundary, which is, this is still a no. You still need to pick that stuff up off the floor, but you get your buy-in first. So strengths are really, really important. And Jen wanted me to mention, I've got quite a few different books, but the Sanguine book that I've just written is basically, it's kind of like a little a gift in that I wrote a book in a way that it's therapy at home, because a lot of the books that I write, you know, they're like 80,000 words long, and they're really long, and parents are sifting through it. And I put it down to a 21-day confidence and optimism builder, and I have a lot of families doing that as a whole family, but also a lot of teenagers are doing it, and there's questions exactly like all the things I've discussed today, where they just reflect and they start growing from the inside out. And that might be a good one for you to even work through, to start thinking about, well, what kind of questions can I ask this person? Because ultimately we're really looking at rethreading the brain from the inside out. And I know a lot of people can't afford to go and see someone for help. Their kids will not go and see someone. So I thought I'd take my 20 plus years of therapeutic work and put it into this 21-day challenge where anybody can access it and have a crack. So you might want to look into that on my website too.
I've got one last question here for you from Alison, and she was asking, what is the best way to handle resistance?
Yeah, resistance, it's so hard. So I missed your name. What was your name?
Alison.
Hi, Alison. That is such a good question. Here's the best way to respond to resistance, not with resistance. And here's the hardest thing, right? Our children are, right from the moment, you know, you think back if you had your child when they were a baby. I mean, I remember just breastfeeding. I love my children so much, but that was grueling, right? It was never at a time that was convenient to me. It wasn't like I could just clock in at 9 to 5, provide the milk and the love, and then just go and have a rest. You know, our children from the beginning, they come to us, they come with their needs when they need them, and they come with their no's and their resistance when it's convenient to them. And this is the hardest thing, Alison, about parenting, is when our children meet us with resistance, is to not respond with resistance ourselves, because then we have two horns locked in together and neither are going to win. The teenager's probably more likely to win because they have that fighting spirit, and they'll just keep going to prove you wrong, because that's fundamentally what they try to do every time they're in conflict with you. So we can't make another human being do anything against their will. And when our children are teenagers, we need to really talk to them. Again, this is about these conversations that happen outside of the moment of conflict, because in the moment of conflict, the prefrontal cortex, the thinking part, takes a vacation. So they're just operating off fight, flight, freeze and emotions and impulse. So they're not even rational at that time. And because emotions are contagious, we then get those emotions from them, we give them back to them, and all we end up is in an argument, and then our relationship with our children frays. And so that disconnect happens, and that lowers each of our resilience. So a really important thing that you can do when you're met with resistance is to say nothing and to be silent for a moment, because when we respond to a resistant person, with our own counter argument, they will come back with another counter argument. We could spend another hour in this constant trying to get our point across. So what we want to teach, you know, the skill that underpins all of this is we want to teach our children how to compromise. We need to have conversations with them outside of that moment and say, you know what, you know, when you really want, I really want you to do something to help the family or to get your homework done or whatever it is. And like, you don't want to do it. I totally get you don't want to do it. You know, there's so many things I don't want to do either. I hate fighting with you because I love you more than life itself. What do you reckon we need to do so that we can get along with each other and work this stuff out? This is where the growth happens in families, is through these conversations. And yes, they're exhausting, but gee, they're worth it. It's such a hard, you know, there is nothing harder than parenting, I'm sure of it, because you love them and you want them to be okay, but at times they're so intensely infuriating, and their brains are so underdeveloped. So we can't fight that. We have to meet them where they're at, and we've got to just keep offering leadership. We've got to forgive them, depersonalize them, and talk to them outside the moment of resistance. And reflective listening, Alison, you know, it's gold, because every new bit of information you add, they're going to counter argue. So when it's back to, I can see this is really hard for you, I love you, and I understand. And so they don't then go, thank you so much, I really appreciate your empathy there, Mum. We're going to have an argument over again. What you're doing is you're neurologically wiring that connection with them. This is what resilience is. It's a lifelong process based on multiple experiences and multiple opportunities to learn and to fall, and to have people who love you and go, you know what, falling is part of life, but I'm proud of you for trying, and what have you learned, and all of those sorts of things. So again, there's like an hour that we could talk about that one question, but we must wrap it up.
Yes.
I'm back to back today.
Madhavi, thank you so much. It's just so wonderful to hear everything, and it's all so useful. I think every parent will just be like, yes, this is what I need to know. And you know, just hearing those, like learning about compromise, teaching our young people about compromise, that's such a valuable lesson. And negotiating for win-win outcomes, it's all super, super important stuff. And I just want to thank everyone for coming today on our webinar, because I'm going to be sending everyone an email with this recording. So if you've missed any of it, you can catch up on that. And I'm going to be sending everyone a little gift as well, which is 33 ways to connect with your team. So that's a little PDF book that I'll be sending everyone. And our next workshop for parenting teams for success is going to be called Raising Aspirations, How to Motivate Your Teen for the Future. And that's going to be at the end of this month, so that will be really useful as well. And I've put a link in the group for anyone that likes to join our Parenting Teens for Success Facebook group. It's a group for parents to basically just support each other in helping your teens for their future success. And so everyone, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for Madhavi so much for all your time and your wisdom about resilience. And I'm certainly going to be going and buying your book. It sounds amazing, sanguine. And and if anyone wants to, send us any messages, I'll forward them on to Madhavi after. Okay, thank you so much.
Me, and thank you to all you lovely people for coming along and sticking with it and letting me go for, I think, double what you'd anticipated.
No, this has been perfect.
Have a beautiful day.
Thanks, Madhavi. Bye.
Bye.